Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a sports betting show or a sports show. It is the Predictive Playbook sports betting show, and you're at the right place to get all your latest information for all the games today. NFL draft information from our great Jim Coventry, who is the GOAT in draft knowledge and also DFS. And I'm your high octane guide through the thrilling world of sports and their entertaining and exciting games, John Ryan. And let me tell you, we're about to dive into a frenzy of stats, odds, and heart pounding action. So buckle up, my friends, because this show is hotter than that 3-pointer made by the Cavaliers the other night. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm going to get this going right now with Jim Coventry. Welcome to the show, Jim. Let's get started with the free agency market and what you see happening here over the last couple of weeks, and also what you may see in terms of possible team moves going into the upcoming draft.
Hey, I think the big news that all four of us want to talk about, I'll quickly gloss over, are the running backs. We know that running backs have been devalued in the NFL. Teams don't want to pay them. Yet there are four good, very good running backs on the open market. All per Adam Schefter are not expected to be franchise tags. That'd be Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, and I should throw in a fifth there, and that would be Austin Eckler. So those players are all expected to hit the open market. Quickly on Barkley. Look, in his last 2 years, he's only missed 4 games. He had durability issues early in his career. It hasn't been much of a problem as of late. And he'll be 27 years old, but because he missed so much time, he only has about 1,200 carries and about 300 receptions in 6 years. So low tread on the tires. We look at his offensive line play. It has been horrible the last 3 years. And last year was as bad as ever. And still he's hovering around 4 yards per carry. Now, we don't like his reception yardage the last few years. He's only at 6.3 yards per reception. But again, there's been nobody for defenses to worry about. So Barkley's had so much attention on him. Now, the problem was his broken tackle rate last year was bad, 34th percentile. But he was good after he was contacted. He was in the 70th percentile after that. Now, again, we go back to the receiving, though. Again, only 12th percentile yards after the catch. But as we said earlier, it's the attention put on him. I think Barkley is where we should start our discussion. Let everybody else kind of chime in about Saquon Barkley before we talk about the other backs.
All right, Jim, let me get you back here. Sorry about that. I'm just putting together a little list of running backs for us to go over. But you mentioned Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry. I think Tony Pollard is one of the more intriguing ones. The Cowboys not making too much of an effort to keep him, I guess, is what I'm hearing. And what do you guys think about the one thing I do want to kind of focus on is that I learned this week that the Eagles are $30 million under the cap, which to me means they can pretty much go get anybody they want. So with that in mind, you can comment on the Eagles' moves or not. But what running back of the ones that Jim has mentioned here do you think is the one to go get? Let's start with Rudy.
That actually is a really great question. Why? Because we know that Tony Pollard is a guy who's shown durability time and time again. He's done it with the Cowboys for years, even despite having Zach Elliott Zach in the back. You find a way to mitigate around that, and that's where Tony Pollard comes into play. Jim, you had spoken about Saquon Barkley. I like the move. I think Saquon could stay in the NFC and stay in the East in the NFC, and maybe the Eagles will take a shot at him. Why? Because they have enough money. They have enough bargaining power. And for those that do not recall, maybe this last conversation kind of would remind you that when you look at the NFL draft, the NFL gives you money along with your own money. So it's a mix to get these guys into your play style to become familiar. But because Saquon is so familiar against this Eagles defense and familiar with the team overall, since he plays within the conference at least twice a season rather, I think if you're the Eagles, you make a kick on the tires of Saquon Barkley and maybe offer him more of a solidified deal, put it all up front so it doesn't hit your cap. I think out of all those aforementioned players, I think Saquon would be a very good fit in the Philadelphia system. Now, there is an alternate to that, and of course, the alternate being Tony Pollard. Why? because he's an NFC guy, and you're familiar with your foes as you play them throughout the regular season, including postseason. So I think that he'd be a good shot. And then last but not least, if Derrick Henry wanted to switch sides and move over from the AFC to the NFC, I don't think the Eagles would not have that conversation with him because he's so big, so durable. He did it in Tennessee for years since he was drafted. So when it's all said and done, if that's your last resort and the other two aforementioned guys are taken, that's who I'd take a shot on. Derrick Henry's just been a beast.
Do the Eagles re-sign DeAndre Swift? I'll pass that one to Chris first, and anybody else can chime in as well. And you can chime in the chat room too if you want. I'm trying to follow along there, so feel free to say anything you want that is not foul. Like baseball's coming up, so that's why I thought of that foul ball, right? All right. So anyway, that wasn't funny. Go ahead, Chris. Tell us if the Eagles are going to take him. Hey, maybe your Giants that you said before we went on the show that they cause you so much pain. Do you think they would go after him?
It's a possibility. I don't think he's going to end up back in Philly. It's I don't know. There's just this part of me that just doesn't think it's going to happen. Now, there is one tiny caveat with Saquon Barkley because, of course, it's the story that won't die. I mean, the tag. There is about 0.0001% chance, according to a couple Giants insiders, that the Giants management could try and tag him again. Again, I know, slight chance, yada, 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 but it is at least there. Among the teams that could take a shot at Barkley even are obviously Philly, Tampa, and Carolina. There's maybe one or two other teams from the AFC that would perhaps kick the tires on Saquon. But as for Swift, I mean, where he can go, I mean, it's quite interesting, guys.
It is interesting because they're going to lose Barkley, right? Is that what we all think, that Barkley's not going to be a Giant anymore?
I can't say it. I just can't. I mean, there's too much that's happened. There's too many things too many bridges burned.
And a lot of disconnect. You're absolutely right, Chris. A lot of disconnect because what he wants, the Giants haven't been able to give him. And we're not talking about from a monetary standpoint. We're talking about an offensive line that can open up the A gaps and to be able to allow him to expose defenses based on what the offensive line does. And they haven't done it. We've seen it with Daniel Jones under center. I know Jim's an anti-dime dropper guy. And for all intents and purposes, I think that if Saquon obviously doesn't get what he's looking for and the Giants don't beef up on that line and maybe grab a quarterback, I think maybe they should look at Carolina Blue as maybe a quarterback option. And just saying, throwing that out there against the wall, maybe it'll stick. But I think, and you're right, Chris, to your point, I think there's been way too much damage done. And you had mentioned it, John, from the onset of the show, that Saquon has not been the most durable back at least while with the Giants. But you tell me why you'd be all that healthy when you have linebackers crushing your offensive line, getting in the backfield, preventing the run and stopping you dead in your tracks. So you could partially blame a lot of that. He's never had a non-contact injury. You mentioned his bumps and the runs and things of that nature, Jim, in regards to how many yards after the catch, how many yards from the backfield, from the line of scrimmage, and so on. It just hasn't been pretty for Saquon because of the offensive line, because of perhaps the play calling in association with that as well. That's another time for another show. But I think overall, when you look at Saquon, probably the healthiest that I've seen him was last season. Now, on coming onto the scene in 2018, he had like 1,300 yards from scrimmage, 261 attempts on a per carry, average 5 yards. So he wasn't bad at all, but you've seen kind of the up and down roller coaster ride that Saquon's been on with the Giants. I don't see him staying with New York at all.
Add a couple things. So when we're talking about Barkley, and we didn't talk about Josh Jacobs, those are the two. And Jacobs obviously had that career year 2 years ago, and he was playing what he thought was for a contract after his option hadn't been picked up. But those are the 2 3-down backs in this discussion. And so if a team wants to go that route, yeah, they'll pay, but you're not going to pay crazy because the free agent market will not heat up that high for a running back. But when we look at other backs, like Tony Pollard, Rudy mentioned, and I think Chris did as well, excellent back. But honestly, he's not a 3-down back. And last year, Dallas learned that the hard way. And in the second half of the season, when they realized Pollard can't sustain a running game, they had to go pass first, which I was shocked that Mike McCarthy actually made that pivot. And so Pollard is best in the committee. Derrick Henry at age 30, still, despite a horrible line, he still was breaking tackles at one of the highest rates in the league, 77th percentile, yards after contact, 86th percentile. So Henry, though, he's a 2-down back and goal line at this point. And then Austin Eckler, I honestly, right now, he's a receiving back because we saw he had the injury last year, but he actually looked good when he came back, and then he faded. 3.5 yards per carry. Again, they didn't have any help on the line, and Mike Williams was out, and then they lost their quarterback, and he got ganged up on. Eckler's a 3rd down back. So it depends what a team wants. If you're adding a committee back, then Eckler, Pollard, and Henry are your go-tos. If you want somebody with the full work, Barkley and Jacobs. And one quick word about DeAndre Swift that I know John brought up. DeAndre Swift, he has very limited vision as a runner. If he sees the one hole, he can get there, but he can't see second level. And that's always been his problem. And it kept him off the field in Detroit a lot. And look, 4.6 yards per carry was good, but he was playing behind Philly's offensive line. And with the receiving threats they had, it was not a good season. And in terms of his metrics, 48th percentile broken tackle rate, slightly below average. After contact, 49th percentile. And we thought he was a great receiver. And in Detroit, they'd scheme him up. Only 29th percentile yards after the catch, but they didn't use him much in that capacity, so we give him a pass on that. But DeAndre Swift, that vision is a real problem. He's a situational back, and that's really all he is.
Yeah, personally, it's surprising that the fact that Swift is a hometown kind of hero in Philly. He went to high school in Philadelphia, and that he would, money talks, right? You'll go anywhere for the money. So I guess that's the end of that. And I would love to see the Eagles get Barkley, a Penn State guy, playing in Philadelphia. That I don't know. I could be dead wrong. I just see that being like a perfect match and maybe a perfect storm for defenses to try to defend then with how strong a running back he is. He hurts people. It's no doubt in that. I think by far he's the best running back on that list. Before we get to the wide receivers, I'm going to throw in just a little bit for the NBA fans that like my betting algorithms. And let's see, this is for February 29th. We only get to say that once every 4 years, guys. I know you didn't know that, and I just wanted everybody to know that today is that weird day that they add to the calendar because of the sun cycle or some kind of mysterious thing with the cosmos. But anyway, this is fact. This is not cosmos. Bet the under. The total is 12 or more points lower than the home team's previous game's total. And the total is 12 or more points lower than the home team's second to last game total. The home team's favored by 3.5 to 9.5 points. The road team has won 60% or more of their games on the season. 128-53 straight up, 71%. 92-87, not much there against the spread, 51.4. But the under has hit 61%, going all the way back to 1996. So bet the under 213.5 points in the Nuggets versus Heat game tonight. And the Heat are playing extraordinarily well, maybe due for a little regression, which would help the under. And also live in-game betting. No one tells you that you have to bet all your money before the game starts. So if you're a $100 bettor, I would say bet $60 at 213.5 and then save the 40 for in-game because scoring volatility in the NBA has never been higher. We saw a game last night where the Clippers, for the first time, I believe in 35 years, blew a 19-point lead. A 19-point lead. They had a 21-point lead in the third quarter, and there has been 25 games this year in the NBA where a team had a 20 or more point lead at some point in the game and lost it. So that is a pretty high number. Last year, there was 30 games like that. And only 16 teams have sadly done that this year out of the 30 that are in the NBA association. So it's pretty good stuff here to just consider the volatility. I'm sure you might be able to get 217 and a half, and then maybe 221 and a half. So split that remaining $40 to $20 each, and just have fun with it. That's the whole idea. We're supposed to have fun betting. You're not supposed to be sweating like a 120-degree day in Phoenix. It's supposed to be fun. So that's the NBA segment there. I hope you guys liked it. Now let's move on to the fun part with the wide receiver list. And I have a list here of Jim's top 10 free agents. Starts with T. Higgins and works its way down in order of his rank to DJ Chark. And Jim, take it away and tell us where some of these guys may end up and why you have them ranked where they ranked. Like, for example, Mike Evans, I think a lot of teams would want him, Eagles included. So take it away and tell us.
Yeah, and I can't wait for the guys to chime in on this, but this is going to be anticlimactic. Higgins is like 99.99% going back to Cincinnati. First, the report from Ian Rappaport was they would use the tag on him, and then it was kind of backed off, but he's not going anywhere. Michael Pittman, yesterday, Jim Irsay came out and said, well, Pittman, whether he franchise tag him or sign him, he's not going anywhere. And the Bucs are on record as saying they are doing everything they can to pay Evans, even if it puts financial strain on the team. So all of a sudden, this glorious free agent market may not develop. And even Calvin Ridley, who I have fifth, Jacksonville, apparently there's mutual interest in bringing Ridley back. All of a sudden now, this list goes down to Marquise Brown, Darnell Mooney, Gabe Davis, and it becomes a very lackluster class. I do want to talk about Marquise Brown. I want to see what the guys have to say about him as well. With Marquise Brown, look, he has been in a situation with Arizona. Kyler Murray's missed a lot of time. And last season at the end, Brown missed time. He'll only be 27. We know he's small, 5'9", 180, but he's proven he could play outside or inside. Again, a little durability, but he is an explosive playmaker. And if he gets a team-friendly deal, I could see a team like the Chiefs, who had Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Justin Watson. Now, Watson can block. I'll give him that. But if they really want a guy in this lineup, and there's some drop issues, Marquise Brown could really add juice to an offense, and I don't think he's going to be expensive. I'd like to hear what the guys think about Marquise Brown and maybe even other names on that list that they think were interesting.
Well, let's turn it over to Chris and see what he thinks.
Brown was the big one for me. I mean, he's only a couple of years. I know I've heard this before because we had some guy named Darren Weller who was a couple years removed from an all-pro season, and it didn't go well last year for him at all, at least until parts of late in the year where he had somewhat of a quarterback throwing to him at times. But again, I mean, the injuries aren't that bad. He's still only 27. There's just this part of me that thinks that he finds a team. He, like Jim said, he's going to find a team friendly deal somewhere. It might be a team like the Giants. Even they need somebody. They need somebody to at least somewhat stretch the field, because that never happened last year. I mean, it got to the point where defenses could just sit out there and just laugh. I mean, they legitimately knew what was coming. I mean, it was like the water boy when they're sitting there and they all shift to the left and like they know the play is coming. It's like, come on, show some imagination, try to it at least. Again, Kansas City's always that other team that's in there. It seems like they magically have money to like make these deals, and for them at least, it somehow works out almost all the time. It's uncanny. I'm jealous. I'm not going to lie. Insert all your cliches here and just roll with it.
It's interesting you mentioned Brown. It's kind of weird because when the Ravens traded him, they got back a little bit more than what they bargained for. But the Cardinals, on the other hand, have failed in all different ways, shapes, and forms. It's almost like having the NFC and the AFC with two very similar teams with very similar records, and they haven't actually done a whole lot of anything. Kyler Murray, probably the biggest crybaby in the NFL in 2023. And if there was an award for that, I'd give him that. He would be the upfront winner of the Crybaby Award in 2023 because of his demeanor, his attitude, his mental capacity to understand that the team itself needs more from an actual leader that he is not. But with that being said, Marquise Brown hoping to get more yards after the catch, hoping to get an arm that can get him the ball. There's a lot of wide receivers who have beefs like that throughout the NFL, and it's not a big secret. This is not like something new to anyone else. But you had mentioned the Giants. The only way he's going to go to the Giants is if they nab a quarterback, because Daniel Jones, he's not that guy. He's just not, and probably never will be. And as good of a season as he had the year before, this one was just the icing on the cake to say that he is just narrowly inconsistent. I know he was injured in the latter part of the year. I get that. However, he's just not that guy in New York. So if they get a maybe not, you're going to find that Marquise would be a great addition to a quarterback that can actually throw the ball and maybe have some escapability and get out from under center and make things happen in New York. If they don't change offensive schemes, I think the Giants will end up finding themselves in a very similar situation this upcoming season, just like they did last season. So the only other free agent that I actually like on this entire list, and you can compare him to guys like Christian Kirk, right, who was on the Cardinals but found himself in a situation where he was able to receive and get that ball and nab it and gain first down yardage and put a lot of yards after the catch. But I think the only other guy I could think of that would be on a hotter market would be someone like Calvin Ridley, right? He came over to Jacksonville, and a guy who has had some legal problems with gambling and things of that nature, and he was suspended, I think, all of the year previous in regards to his indiscretions. He's a big-bodied guy. You can compare him to Odell Beckham Jr. as a good example. Do the Ravens re-sign Odell? I don't know. We'll find out, but I think they will. But at the end of the day, I think that there really isn't a whole lot of movement throughout the NFL landscape for wide receivers. Maybe this just isn't the year for free agents, whether it's a running back or wide receiver, because a lot of these teams want to beef up, gain more ground, gain better perspective with some of the talent that's out there, especially at the NFL Combine right now, and see how they mesh with their team, as well as if they're likable or not, coachable or not, and trainable to play at the NFL speed.
I like it. I also like this DJ Chark too. I'm glad that Jim put him on the list, because I think he potentially is a diamond in the rough. I mean, really, when you think about it, how many people actually know and recognize the name? He's become like kind of like a journeyman. I think he played for Detroit and then Carolina and Jacksonville. He started his career, right? I like it when Jim goes like this, because then I know I feel smart. But he seems to be coming off a pretty good year. I have those stats in front of me right now. He played in 15 games, which matches his career high. His catch percentage isn't all that impressive at 55%, which means every time he's targeted, does he catch the ball? Now, that also includes bad throws. So I'd have to go into the database and factor that out as well. But assuming that, bad throws, depending on what team you're on, isn't that big a number. Say on Carolina, maybe 60% catch rate. If he gets that up a little bit higher than that, for any team that acquires him, I think he'll be a diamond in the rough, and I don't think he has any downside at all. The guy's Jim, 6'4", 210.
Yeah, and he actually can run. His body size, weight-wise, seems smaller. He's a true X-type receiver. He's not your dominant one, but he can line up on the line. He can take the press man. He can win. Now, he's been used in different capacities. He's been used as a deep threat at times, and that kind of mirrors his catch rate. Obviously, the deeper the pass, the lower the completion percentage goes there. But he is going to be 28. And when he was in Detroit 2 years ago, there were limited games he played when he was healthy and available, but he had a number of 90-yard games. And even when Andy Dalton stepped in for that one game last year, Chark had a big game. So if Chark has some competent quarterback play, if he's not the guy, especially if he's a number 3 or even a number 2 on a high-powered offense, if he gets into a situation like that with a good coach, a good quarterback, yeah, he may not be a superstar, but like John, you're saying, he is going to be a very functional part of an NFL offense.
No question. And I'm going to conclude the show with one last question. We're going to have Chris do hockey next show, but due to time restraints here and our schedules, I'm going to end it with this one question. Over the last 25 Super Bowls, the teams that were in the Super Bowl the previous season, there's only been 4 times that both teams made the playoffs in the following season. So we have the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Is it likely? It's never happened back-to-back years where both teams made it to the playoffs again. It's mind-blowing, right? Which team doesn't make it? 30 seconds, Rudy.
Oh man. Unless the Steelers
Top-
make a change, probably not going to happen. I don't see them making any playoff run unless they upgrade from Kenny Pickett. We've seen 2 years of what Kenny can do, and Kenny just can't do it. So that would be mine.
Well, I meant what team between your choices of 49ers or Kansas City? In other words, the following year after the Super Bowl, those 2 teams,
You're right.
only one makes it back to the playoffs.
It would be Kansas City for me.
Chris, what do you think?
I have to go the opposite way here.
Interesting.
It's San Francisco. Look, Kyle Shanahan, you got so close. You couldn't properly train your defensive players on what the procedures were for a simple overtime. This could go south pretty quickly if there's another injury or two, especially to some guy named CMC. It would not take much for it to go south. Whereas with Kansas City, let's face it, it's the AFC West. They're still bad. There's nothing that really stands out other than maybe, I don't know, some team from Southern California. But until Herbert shows me the ability to win games by more than 3 points and not have his kicker screw up in the fourth quarter, I'm pretty confident that Kansas City will be okay.
This is actually tough. This is tough.
Yeah, it is.
Because, all right, with the Chiefs, it's not that they've made the playoffs. They've made the AFC Championship game 6 straight years. I mean, it's like not just the playoffs, but they have gone deep, deep, deep every single year. But I'm kind of with Rudy because if Joe Burrow gets healthy, if the Ravens continue to go, and there's more competition in the AFC potentially, and it might not be at all. And so that's the only way I could see it. But I mean, the odds of a player getting, like a quarterback getting hurt, yeah, it happens, but Mahomes most likely stays healthy. So now we flip to the other side. McCaffrey's been healthy for 2 years, but we go back to 2 years prior and he was hurt a lot. If McCaffrey gets hurt, which running backs do, I don't think Brock Purdy can take that team. So it's a tough one. I'm going to end up siding with Chris and say the 49ers because I think the McCaffrey injury is more likely than Mahomes injury because that's what's going to take for one of them to miss.
I could be bold and say they both don't make it.
Oh,
Hey, that's like
Canelo
in the Tecate commercial.
That's what I want to do.
Go bolder.
That would have to be 100-1. That would be
Well,
a
way
crazy
more
one.
than
at
that.
least.
Way more than that.
Yeah,
you're in the hundreds, well into the hundreds.
I'll have to make a phone call and see if I can get that bet made. $10, $20, what the heck, right? I don't know. It's very hard, and Alex mentioned the Super Bowl loser does. With the exception of the Eagles this past year, the Eagles finished like Super Bowl losers usually start a season. Cincinnati Bengals that one year started out horribly bad, but still made it to the playoffs. I guess they were like 1-5, 1-4, but got their act together. But it'll be interesting to see. I think it's a fascinating question to consider, and not too many people realize that it's hard to win a Super Bowl. I mean, it is unbelievably difficult to win a Super Bowl, let alone win 2 in a row. We saw what happened to the Patriots after they won 2 in a row. And if you don't know that answer, there's a great show on Netflix going on right now called Dynasty. And it's incredible production. I encourage everybody to watch that, even if you hate the Patriots. I happen to be a fan of them for a very, very long time. And they did suck one time, worse than the Giants, worse than the Jets, worse than the Carolina Panthers. And it was painful because I was in high school and I took abuse. I took serious abuse, and it's affected me. and I've been going to therapy ever since. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for being on this show. Make sure you check out Rudy Reyes on the Rude Dog Show. He has great shows every single day. And he's also the voice of Southern California on iHeartRadio in the afternoons, Pacific Standard Time. Visit Chris Wassel. He does content over at gambling.com and a bunch of other places that I'm sure he'll be able to share with you. And the GOAT, Jim Coventry, my GOAT, my personal GOAT for DFS. The guy's made me extra money this past football season. In fact, the past 3 seasons that we've been doing those shows. So every Saturday during the NFL season, we join forces and we really get at it. So until the next show next week, bet with your heads, not over it, and may all the wins be yours.